The wire? Yeah.
Can you get the VIP up?
Yeah, sure.
Because I have to announce. Girls, can you three go to the back? Jay, Sorry? All right, guys. Hello, hi, can I have your attention? The VIP is on his way up. If you need to leave or enter the room during the process of the debate, the back door is open. Please don't use the front door anytime throughout the entire, closing awards, etc. Thank you. Screw you, Liv. Quite literally. Debaters will be speaking from the podium, yeah? Debaters will be speaking from the podium. Mehrad, this is for you. Wait. Jay, can you pass it to Mehrad? Put it all the way. Put it, there's still burning. Sorry. Technology betrays you. My phone is flight. Is that easy? All right, can we all settle down? The VIP is about 30 seconds away. It's already in the elevator. Yes, that would be nice actually. Hey, we should have. We will move to Garapu right after the VIP, right? Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. So you all stand up and then do the Garapu straight. You can thank Miktab for that. Announcing the arrival of the guest of honor, Nick Abdul Qadir bin Mohammed, Deputy General Secretary of Management, Ministry of Youth Malaysia, accompanied by Dr. Singh, Vice President of Operations, Deputy Education Group, Dr. Chandra Thomason, Executive Advisor of IDP. It would be requested that everyone remain standing for the guard food. Abdul Qadir bin Mohammed, our guest of honor, Deputy Secretary General, Management Ministry of Youth and Sports, Mr. Gopal Singh, Vice President of Operations of Public Education Group, Dr. Chandra Thomason, Executive Advisor of the Malaysian Student Debate and Public Speaking, debaters, adjudicators, friends, and fellow members of the audience. Welcome to the grand finals and closing ceremony of the Malaysian National Inter-Varsity Debate Championship. Over the past 3 days, a total of close to 200 students competed in the third edition of the National Debating Championship, which has been supported by the Ministry of Youth since its inception 3 years ago in 2014, through 5 preliminary rounds and 3 elimination rounds, with the 4th elimination round, the last one, happening today. Participating, or rather qualifying for the grand finals, are as follows: in opening government from University of North Jimara, Jaina Jafar, and Izzat. Apologies, that's opening opposition. So in closing opposition from Taylor's, Amir Agassia, and in opening of government from the University of Asian College, Wesley. And in closing government, also from Inter-Varsity, Mirza Muhammad and Jasmine. Adjudicating this grand final, we have 7 adjudicators, led or chaired by Behrat Aduli from APU, Patrick Chang from UM, Deborah Wong from UM, Zim Ahmadi from IIUM, Shirley from NUS, and Aishan from NCU. And the motion that stands before the House, this House regrets the idealization of motherhood. I'll pass this on to the chair of the adjudication team, Behrat.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the grand finals of Asia Pacific University Nationals 2016. Just a couple of house rules. You're encouraged to get excited about the speeches as long as you can keep that to yourself and that doesn't interfere with the flow of the debate because you need to adjudicate. And please silence your phones, stay quiet, use the back door if you want to get out of the hall. And yeah, with no further ado, I'd like to invite the Prime Minister to start the final.
Testing. Test, test. Test, test, test. Okay. All right. See, when I was a child growing up in a lower middle income class Chinese family, I remember vividly a Chinese folk song that roughly translates to the only good person in the world is your mom. And I think that forms the basis of what my mother did for me, sacrificing her career and a lot of other things. And I think that's the key towards the idealization of motherhood. It involves sacrifice, right? That the whole beauty of motherhood idealizes sacrifice. And I think that is regrettable, right? Because why do we regret the idealization of motherhood? And to understand why, we need to understand what do we mean by the idealization of motherhood. Now, we think idealization of motherhood involves the notion in society that the most suitable parent to raise a child is the mother, and that being a mother is a beautiful thing, and to have a mother sacrifice her career, sacrifice her health, sacrifice a lot of other things for her kid is a beautiful thing, and it's idealized, it's romanticized. We regret it because we prefer a world where there is a more equitable notion of parenting. So I have a few substantives, right, that mostly deal with how this idealization of motherhood is bad for the woman and the family dynamics, right? So I think a lot of this revolves around the removal of agency for the woman by propagating a gender role. And because idealization of motherhood, it places an expectation on the woman, where they are implied to be the better caretaker, just because they are the ones who gave birth to them, just because they were the ones who bore the child for 9 months. That means they are the better actor in parenting. We think that's not true, right? We think in order for a better family dynamics, we need to have the man, the husband, the father to participate in the family dynamics. And we think we can largely see two outcomes of the idealization of the motherhood, right? We think the idealization of motherhood in society, right, it's very coercive. And I'll talk about two things here, because it coerces the woman, number one, to have a child, and secondly, to not abort. Firstly, when they are coerced into having a child, because the idealization of motherhood, right, it paints motherhood as such a beautiful picture. It paints it as such a romanticized idea that you will be stigmatized if you don't have a child, because it's such a beautiful thing and society just expects you to have a child. The common argument will be, why won't you want to have a child? No, sit down. Because they are expected to be the main caretaker, right? And secondly, why are they coerced to have a child? Because they are expected to be the main caretaker. They are expected to be the better caretaker, where in fact we think men should have an equal role in child raising, and it is bad for them to just dump the responsibility of child raising just because the women are the better caretaker, or it is commonly assumed to be. And we think that because they are coerced into having a child, they become less likely to have financial capability. And this is the justification mainly used by a lot of companies when they give lower pay to women, because women will give birth, they have to take maternity leave, and men don't. And that's how a lot of companies justify the wage disparity between men and women. We think when this gender role, this idealization, this romanticization of motherhood is removed, right? We think that it will remove the expectation of women and the assumption that a woman will have a child. And because of that, we think that we can improve the wage disparity, right? Because when women have no financial capabilities, they have no say in important family decisions, right? And we think this is a very bad family power asymmetry that we must correct. But first, I'll take Amrit.
So in a world where there's no idealization of motherhood, how do you expect mothers are going to be treated in the world?
Yeah, we expect women to be treated as equal human beings, right? We expect them to not be treated as childbearing machines, because that's when you idealize the whole notion of motherhood. That's what women are boiled down to be, that until they reach the age of 30, they'll bear a child, they'll get married and bear a child, and after that they will take care of the child because they are the better caretakers of the child. We think that's not true, right? We think they should be able to choose for themselves. They should be able to have agency for themselves to choose if they want to have children. They will have they can have children, but if they don't want to, society should not place an expectation on them too. Society should not coerce them into having children. And secondly, a bit similar but different, right? We talk about how society stigmatizes them not to abort. So society coerces them not to abort. Because when society idolizes motherhood, right, you are stigmatized if you you abort, regardless of whether it is legal in the state or not. Because we see that legality and morality often do not reconcile. Because when an expectation created by the idealization of motherhood, it expects you to want to be a mother, right? It expects even if you don't want to, because it limits the morality of the society, because they think they can't because society can't reconcile the idea of a beautiful motherhood and a woman choosing to abort. Because when such an expectation is placed on women, such an expectation is placed on society, and society has this kind of preconceived notion that women will want to be a mother because motherhood is such a beautiful thing, because motherhood involves sacrifice, and that is a beautiful thing. They expect a mother to sacrifice a lot of things, and that is very, very bad for the gender gap, right? And when we want to have a more equal, when we want to have more equality between men and women, when we want to have better wage gap between men and women, when we want more equal participation of the father in a family relationship, we think first we must remove the expectation, we must remove the idealization of motherhood in society. And therefore, I'm very, very proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker, for the speech. Now, to open the debate for the opposition side, I'd like to invite the leader of opposition. Thank you.
That beer is lean, that beer is lean. He's right, he's right. Woo.
Love you guys. My mother is the kind of person who would always tell me stories about all the experiences that she had to go through when she took care of me. Like there was this one time where I was a kid, three days after I was born, I had to fly to Scotland because my dad was doing his master's there and we wanted to stay there. It was, as told by my mom, one of the worst experiences that she had to go through because she was a first-time mom and it was a huge responsibility, a lot of work that she had to do, taking care of me on a plane ride, going to Scotland. And whenever I ask her, is that the kind of experience that you regret, or is that the kind of experience that you wouldn't want to go through again because of how hard it was? She said she'd do it all over again. And that's the thing that we have to recognize in this debate, ladies and gentlemen. We have to recognize that sometimes a lot of the choices that a mother makes when it comes to sacrifice, a lot of the choices that a mother makes for the outcome that is who I am as I stand today are all active choices that my mother, all of our mothers, would appreciate until today. I think it's disingenuous for the Prime Minister to say that your choice as a woman is only legitimate at the point you decide not to be a mother. That is the rhetoric we deny, and that is the rhetoric we oppose. This debate operates on two important contexts. The first is that, as I rightfully agree with the Prime Minister, there currently exists a rhetoric that the autonomy of a woman is something that's extremely important. She should be able to do whatever she wants, and she should be able to have the liberty to do so. And I quite celebrate that very rhetoric. But unfortunately, the second context where this debate operates in is that the choices of a woman is something that is limited by the patriarchy, something I agree. But this patriarchy also, through culture, imposed a responsibility and an expectation towards women to be a mother and to be a wife and so on. Unfortunately, that particular rhetoric stands until today, to the point where when the second a mother considers to actually wanting to be a mother because maybe she enjoys the miracle that is your baby touching your finger when she just gave birth, is something that maybe is illegitimate because apparently culture said that that is what made your decision, and that is an important context for us to consider. What we prefer from this side of the house is simple. We believe the idealization of this particular culture is important because it's good for women and also valuable for the discussion in regards to the identity and also the interests of the woman. I'll talk about two things. Firstly, I'll talk to you about how we allow the moderation of the message towards women. Second of all, I'll talk about the outcomes as a result of this moderation. Let's look, okay, sure.
Surely we are able to tell women that it is perfectly legitimate for you to be a mother without idealizing motherhood and glossing over all the difficulties of being a mother.
The unfortunate reality is, in the past, culture said that there is a utility in being a mother because there's no other way for you to bear a child. It is with the idealization of motherhood is when we realize that there is a value in you being a mother, should you take that choice and should you consider that choice to begin with. We think idealization is what precisely gave value to being a mother. Two things under how we allow the moderation. Firstly, in regards to the roles we place on women. Second of all, on motherhood itself. The first, on roles. Currently, as it exists right now, there is a trend in the form of the brush of liberalism that dictates as to what is considered legitimate, what is considered unoppressive, and what is considered good or bad. Arguably, and I don't know whether I'm going to regret saying this in public or not, a lot of people may say that maybe adopting a religion is something that is oppressive because you believe in something that maybe, possibly, don't know whether it's true or not, irrational, maybe you believe something that is very oppressive, and so on. But fortunately, a lot of people actually calculate the decision in wanting to adopt a religion, believing that maybe perhaps the things that we don't see, maybe perhaps the things that we don't know for sure are things that are completely based on faith. And faith in of itself is something that's extremely powerful. And that's a legitimate decision that anyone would have made anyway. Unfortunately, the brush of liberalism as they stand right now is that just by virtue of it not coming from your own rationality or by virtue of it being something that's not immediately logical, it's something that is bad in of itself. Motherhood, as it stands right now, is something that is being threatened by that very rhetoric as well. Why is that so? Because right now, as it stands right now, if you were to be a mother, as the Prime Minister rightfully illustrated, you sacrifice a lot of things. That implies that by virtue of you being a mother, you adopt a life that you do not want, that you adopt a life that you would want to give back and take a life that would be complete, that would include you being completely independent and not being a mother at all. That is extremely unfair. If you want to moderate the voice of feminism and wanted the voice of the advocacy for the identity of a woman, why? Because more often than not, it is an extremely important bond that exists when it comes to you being a mother. And the reason for this is because you feel the sensation of having a kid who directly comes from you, a kid who you suffered 9 months of labor in wanting to give, and you still wanting that child even after that 9 months of labor, and you wanting to still see that child growing up, and you keeping yourself vulnerable to maybe perhaps anything that that child may go through or that child may suffer, because you feel this bond that is extremely strong between you and your child, that is completely independent and exclusive because of the fact that it is you are the only person who brought this child into this world. Sure, it sounds flowery. Sure, it sounds illustrative. But the fact is that is something that a woman could possibly feel. And that is an illustration that a mother could possibly want to idealize. And we think that is fair, because it is an expectation as to how she wants to live her life, and that is something that's important for us to consider. Given that, ladies and gentlemen, what would the outcome be if we allow this moderation? This would mean, ladies and gentlemen, should there be a woman who is considering a life of complete career and wanting to spend for the next 10 years of her life working from 7 all the way to 9, and then maybe have to entertain the fact that she would have to also take care of a child and whether that's possible or not. Just maybe it's okay for us to let her entertain the idea that maybe you would have to sacrifice your life, or that maybe perhaps you would have to make some decisions in regards to how you manage your life, because that there is a possibility that you do have some feelings that you've had in regards to wanting to be a mother and wanting to have a child. Unfortunately, not idealizing the notion of being a mother immediately strips this woman the ability to be able to actually have that consideration to begin with, because there is an imposition that we toll onto women that if you were to sacrifice your career over being a mother, it immediately means that you are giving in to the patriarchy. It immediately means that you are giving in to the culture. And that is unfortunate and that is sad, because it means that we stripped away the ability for a woman to feel extremely happy knowing that she maybe gave birth to a child like me, even though that's not that big of a gain to begin with. For that very reason, we're extremely happy to defend all the women who feels this happiness.
Thank you, Speaker, for the speech. Now to continue the debate, I'd like to invite Deputy Prime Minister.
Perhaps it was very noble of Izzat's mother to tell him that she would do it all over again in terms of raising him. But the question in this debate is that those who were coerced, those who were pressured into having children, would they have the space to tell their children that I actually wouldn't want to do it again? That I actually wouldn't want to feel the pain of labor, that I wouldn't want to feel the pain of raising a children again one more time. They will never have that space, Mr. Speaker. It's because of the idealization of motherhood that we have. I'm going to talk about the harms of being forgiving towards women because of this motherhood also, but before that, a couple of responses. Now, let's talk about the moderation of the message to women. Now, side opening opposition essentially wants to live in a world of blissful ignorance. And as evident in Izzat's speech, if she doesn't rationally, logically decide, who are we to say that is not a good decision? I think as debaters, as people who subscribe to logic, as people who give value to full informed choices, it's kind of sad to say these things. It's kind of naive to say these things. We appreciate fully informed decisions. But I'll go further and say that if you feel the sensation of being a mother by virtue of motherhood being idealized and it gives you that extra value, then we are okay with losing that sensationalization, Mr. Speaker. Why is this so? Because this comes at the expense of all the harms Wesley brought to you in his speech, which is not conveniently ignored, right? A, the fact that you're pressured to have a child even if you didn't want to, and you can't fully inform to that, can't fully consent to that decision because people pressure you to have a child. And when you want to abort, when you don't feel like that child is something that you're ready to have, people will tell you, you should be proud to be a mother. Why would you want to abort your child? These decisions are so difficult on women, and that you're willing to sacrifice all this for the additional level of sensationalization from being a mother. We think if it's less value, that it's just a very neutral thing. Oh, I have a child, it breathes, it can move. We think we are okay with that, right? Because in addition to that, we would say that if someone fully consents to their decision, so if they actually want to have a child beyond this idealization of motherhood, because we would say that even if we don't idealize a motherhood, people would still see the value in having a child, would want to have a child, right? That can still possibly happen. We would say that at the point which you fully consent to it, you're okay with it, you will derive happiness from having that child, right? As opposed to that child that you didn't want to begin with and you are pressured to have at the end of the day. So when you choose with full information, we think happiness can exist, and if you lose that slight value of sensationalization, we are okay with. In addition to that, we would say that a lot of the difficulties in having a child, for example, the fact that you have to pay for their education, the fact that you have to sacrifice your career, the fact that you'll be really tired from work every day and you don't have time for leisure, all these things aren't considered immediately by the parent or by the couple or by the mother at the point in which they decide to have the child or pressure to have the child. We don't think that those difficulties are consented to at the point in which we realize that we idealize motherhood and they decided to have the child, therefore we can make them feel good about it by idealizing motherhood, right? So a lot of the difficulties come later. We think we need to be able to make sure that they have slightly more of a logical and less pressured decision when they decide to have a child. Sure.
In a world where you don't idealize and paint motherhood to be beautiful, can you please tell me what the incentive of the patriarchal man is to paint it as something beyond just a burden or something a woman has to do?
So I think that it's not a patriarchal structure would probably be more involved in the parenting process when society realizes that there has to be an equal amount of influence by both parents in it, right? When we say that motherhood places the pressure on the mother to take care of the child, it's because by virtue of having given birth, for the next 1 year, you're breastfeeding the child, it continues for the next 9, 18 years that you are supposed to do the same things. So we say that that same patriarchal structure, by virtue of removing that pressure on mothers, would mean that there will be more pressure on fathers or any patriarchal structure for that matter to be more involved in raising that child. So we think that they'll be more involved and that's better for like parenting in general, right? So what am I going to talk to you about? We think firstly, in terms of mothers losing that autonomy to decide when they choose not to. So we think as a result of this policy, right, some people, a lot of people will decide not to have children because the idealization doesn't exist and that same pressure doesn't exist anymore. Why is this good? Because we say that if we remove that stigma on mothers that they are expected to have children, that society will expect them to have children, that same society is more likely to employ them. That same society is more likely to give them more money. Why is this so? Because at the point in which employers realize that I will expect you to have a child, society expects you to have a child, your family will expect you to have a child, therefore you will have a child, and then they're more likely to make the decision to not give you as much money, right? We think if financial empowerment can increase for the mother, we think that the symmetry of power in the family institution improves as well, right? Because when fathers don't have to sacrifice their careers, don't have to take paternal leaves, don't have to spend as much time as home, then they get to make that argument that they're the breadwinners of the family, therefore I get to make all these important decisions for my family. We think that's very, very, very toxic. We think when we give more financial empowerment, we think women have greater lobbying power, they have greater ability to have a say in that family institution, and we think that in that sense, there's more space for them to be involved. But also, we would say that at the point in which we idealize motherhood, we are also giving the idea that women are weaker beings, right? So I think this will engage with the POI a little bit also. No, thank you. By assuming that women are expected to have mothers, expected to be mothers, we are also inherently assuming that women are weaker beings that need the help, right? What does this mean? So we say, sure, it's okay to get some help during your pregnancy time because you are physically less capable to do certain things, and that help is okay. But the general narrative then becomes is that if every woman is expected to be a mother, if every woman will spend some portion of their lives having a child, then I'm supposed to take extra care of the women. That I'm supposed to put more pressure on the women to take care of themselves, not do dangerous things, not go out, not make friends with dangerous people, even though these are things that they derive full utility from, right? So it makes it more apparent to society that if they are likely to have a child, then they shouldn't make these decisions. That's when conservative structures, patriarchal structures, make an excuse that you should stay at home, right? And that your role is to be a mother, and being a mother is a beautiful thing. We concede that we won't eliminate completely the pressure on women to have children, but we will say that in a world where there is less pressure, less stigma on them to have children, more of them can have greater space in making choices, right? As a result, they will more likely to make decisions that will give them the full utility of happiness in their lives. And we don't assume that they're just baby-making machines. I feel kind of sorry for my mother that she had to give up a lot of things in her life. And I doubt she will ever tell me that I would do it all over, that I wouldn't do it all over again. We want to remove the stigma. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, for that speech. Now, I'd like to call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Yeah.
She's so pretty, oh so pretty, she's so pretty.
I give that a 74. Okay. Yes. Test? Yeah. As many of you in this room that can appreciate my father jokes, a lot of you also understand that the struggles that my mother faced when she had to make the difficult decision to move back to this country when she was left by a man when she was 8 months pregnant. I think that in this regard, often the utility that is used as a language to denote the choice of motherhood is something that is never contrasted to the sacrifices that an individual makes, is never contrasted to the choices that a person makes, and is never contrasted to how we deeply and fully appreciate that individual. And that's what idealization allows for. I've hoped the opening government would have been more judicious in this debate. Because the first thing I must debunk is this whole idea that the idealization of motherhood often leads to women being pushed into isolation. I don't agree, because a lot of the times the idealization of motherhood allows for the acknowledgement of the different choices that an individual can make, the variety of circumstances that may have impacted that process, and the sacrifices that come at that. And that can impact both working women as well as women who choose not to work as well. But secondly, that Izzat told you very clearly in his speech that this isn't the only rhetoric that exists in the world, that the expectation and coercion do exist under that side of the house. I think what was distinguished in Izzat's speech is a language in which we utilize to denote the expectation and that pressure is that oftentimes there are cultural and societal and patriarchal structures that tell you that the responsibility of being a woman is being a woman and a mother is based on utility and your role, but not an appreciation of that utility and that role, ladies and gentlemen. In the eyes of government, the legitimacy of your actions to determine your life is contingent on you making the right choice. Because notice that they say that pressure, because I would say that pressure is exerted onto women exactly because of the rhetoric that is pushed. That if you choose to stay at home, or if you choose to work and have children, that there's no one basis of legitimate action, right? And I think that a lot of the time, the rhetoric is pushed against women that don't allow for them to meaningfully participate in the life in the pursuit of happiness at their own standard. And oftentimes, exactly because of the argument that they told us in opening government, that you don't have a valuable voice, that you will never be able to be a meaningful contributor at a dinner table just because you don't choose to have a job, just because you didn't sacrifice your opportunities and your chances, right? What did idealization do? Because we have to be comparative. Where did coercion really come from? Notice that when it comes to patriarchal expectations, that a lot of societies, religion, and culture glorify the utility of women and say that the role of you as an individual is not only to supplement the prophet or the shepherd of your life, but it's also to continue the bloodline, because really the utility of women is a womb that you have, but the creation of the role of that child did come from the sperm, and you needed that sperm in order for that child to materialize. So I think the way in which we view the expectations and the role is one that's coercive in nature. What did idealization do? A lot of times, idealization tells individuals that your sacrifices are acknowledged, that it is beautiful that you did choose to take up that responsibility, that perhaps there is a biological distinction between the relationships that you may have as a mother in comparison to a father, because that is an experience that is that cannot be shared by another individual. What does the world look like, ladies and gentlemen? I think firstly, we must debunk, no thank you, the liberal caricature of the world today and what it looks like. Because there's an expectation that you must fulfill your choices in the most libertarian form as possible. So they say that choice needs to exist. I think choice does exist. But when a woman chooses to make a decision to become a mother, or when a person chooses to leave a high-rising job to become a stay-at-home mom, that choice becomes rejected because the liberal world tells you that a choice is illegitimate, that a choice is not beautiful, that there's no utility behind that choice. And I think that a lot of the times, if you're going to argue that motherhood is a tool of patriarchy, that a lot of the times patriarchal structures don't even acknowledge that sacrifice, that don't acknowledge the variety of choices that women can opt into, even if it's based on baseless faith, right? And I think a lot of the times, even though our moms would say that they don't want to live through those days again, that they never ever resent the fact that we were created from those choices, that they get to go home and look at their babies and know that they love them at the end of the day. In this world, we allow for a comparative worldview that allow for individuals to be able to introspect the decisions that they make, to be able to introspect the choices and the decisions that come with being a mother. No. What did idealization do? One is that I think idealization allowed for an evolution in the way in which we view feminism. A lot of the times, the starting point of feminism operated on a libertarian platform, which is that you must have absolute and unfettered ability to access equality. But notice that a lot of the times, equality is contingent upon what the least conservative society tell you must have. That means you must be working, that you must that you must always have opportunities, that you must always make decisions on your own. That if you choose to abort, then that's great, because that's something that's an avenue that you choose to access. But what it does allow is the evolution of feminism to acknowledge that perhaps the way in which we view what makes a legitimate choice for a woman can also be something that is closely related to motherhood. The fact that women can seize the definition of motherhood from patriarchal structures that tell you it's about utility, but also the ability for a woman to claim that the patriarchy can't tell me it's about utility, but also my ability to acknowledge my sacrifice and my role as an individual, and my ability to claim that feminism is my own. That's why the feminist movement have evolved to include things like cultural feminism that allow for the ability for us to acknowledge the biological roles of women in societies and why that's necessarily important. Yes.
If there's an expectation on mothers to do something, or women to do something at least in patriarchal societies, wouldn't removing the idealization allow them to either choose work or have a child?
No. The removal of idealization pegs them to that utility. The removal of the idealization removes the sacrifice notion, removes the romantic ideals that we do attach to motherhood that allow for women to choose. Secondly, let's look at public policy. A lot of the times, when we don't acknowledge the different varieties of decisions that people can make, the way in which we view policies are unilateral in nature and myopic. In that, like, when we allow for paternal leave for these individuals and fathers left their work and spent time with their children, they acknowledge the sacrifice that women do face. The fact that, like your vagina is torn apart, the fact that you had difficulties to walk, the fact that you have to carry like milk in your breast that you can expel at any time in public, and it created the realization that push for better maternity leave for women, that push for more money for these women, but it also allowed for women and their full ability to pursue. I think it's not enough to say that you need full information. Sometimes decisions can also be based on intuition. Sometimes people can make the comparative and balance out between my intuition and whether or not I can match that intuition, ladies and gentlemen. I think a lot of the times that allow for women to choose the life that they want to appreciate their own sacrifice, and allow for society to finally acknowledge that perhaps patriarchal structures in which we view women shouldn't exist and don't exist anymore. And this is when we stop viewing women as mules, and this is when we start appreciating our moms. Very proud to report.
Thank you, Jay. To open the closing up of the debate, I'd like to invite member of government. Here.
Ironically, the 27th of November is my mother's birthday. That's today. Hopefully, if we win this grand finals, I can take her out to dinner. I probably haven't been the best of children, but maybe after I win, I'll be worthwhile. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important to note in this debate that while the opening opposition has been very true in the sense that we need to appreciate the mothers and the sacrifice that they made, it's also important to note that they still haven't responded to, firstly, whether the patriarchal structures that cause these individuals to be forced to be mothers are going to be fixed by the structures that they concede or don't respond to reinforcing those structures to begin with. In fact, the case seems to be that I've resigned myself to those patriarchal structures, and now all I want to do is mitigate the damage, appreciate the victims of this patriarchal structure, and make sure they can do what they want in those systems, ladies and gentlemen. Or secondly, they haven't told us, within conceding to those patriarchal structures and appreciating to them, sit down, is that they haven't told us in appreciation that these individuals are empowered in agency, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we think it's exceptionally important. The difference is that if you agree that this is born out of patriarchy, then the notional statement of individuals appreciating people that are becoming mothers or saying that that's great, I appreciate you, usually doesn't accompany, but I respect your ability to not be a mother. Or I respect your ability to be a mother and then have your ability to choose whether or not you leave your home, whether you want a second child, or the kind of mother that you're going to be. Agency doesn't come in the equation in this particular circumstance. The first thing I want to do is debunk the opening opposition's argumentation in regards to this being a corrective narrative to an existent liberal narrative that disallows individuals from being a mother. Because that's what their case fundamentally lies on in this debate. Because ladies and gentlemen, really, do we live in a world where people find it so difficult to choose to be a mother or are shamed in order to be the mother? The best case scenario I can give the opening opposition is that with the advent of medical technology that allowed women to have children for much older years, or for women to be larger economic productivity in society, ladies and gentlemen, the best you can claim is that in the most productive and liberal of societies, that the age of when it's acceptable to be a mother has moved for a decade or for 5 years, ladies and gentlemen. But there's still fundamentally a deadline in those particular structures. Never is there a society that finally doesn't shame a woman for not eventually choosing to be a mother in those particular circumstances, ladies and gentlemen. And that's being exceptionally generous to the characterization that happened in the opening opposition, not taking into account that all of pop culture and media have romanticized motherhood to a significant and obscene extent. The fact that culturally, religiously, as well as sociologically, we've cultured women not only from prehistoric times, but for millions and thousands of years, to say that women's role in the family is to stay at home as gatherers or stay at home as being mothers and caretakers. That there's a biological inclination for people to point towards that you have the body parts or the things in order to carry out a caretaker's role in that particular scenario, ladies and gentlemen. So surely, ladies and gentlemen, the narrative that currently exists isn't that women find it so difficult to be a mother, but they find it really difficult to not be a mother in the status quo. And that's why the premise of the opening opposition's case was flawed. But secondly, we think that it's also important to note that romanticization and sacrifice doesn't essentially mean that you are empowered or people respect your ability to make choices. Because notice, within these patriarchal structures, oftentimes there are very superficial acknowledgements of people's sacrifice that people often say, here, let me give you a trophy, I appreciate what you've done. Or here, you fulfilled your role. But when it comes to actually taking a hit personally, things like additional cost to yourself, a man taking off from work in order to take care of a child, a man finally needing to acknowledge that a woman may earn the same amount of money. When those concrete terms of having to take a cost to yourself, oftentimes the very same individuals that appreciate those women aren't able to take those costs, because fundamentally you create superficial amounts of appreciation but not the structural ones, because still fundamentally belying all of that, ladies and gentlemen, is still a patronizing rhetoric that tells you that you need to be a mother and your role is to be a mother in those particular circumstances. And we think that's exceptionally important. It's incredibly important to note in this debate, lastly, ladies and gentlemen, that while individuals are patriarchal, they use the veneer of using the words like you are great, you are appreciated, and things like that in the double speak that exists under the opposition side that's significantly more effective in inducing individuals to make those choices. Now, the closing opposition asks a very important question, which is that what happens when you don't let people use that language anymore? In that particular scenario, we would think that patriarchal figures would have to be honest and have to be clear about the fact that they want people to leave their jobs because they don't think they deserve to be part of the working force, that they don't deserve to work in comparison to men. We think that's significantly less effective in inducing women rather than using Jedi mind tricks to tell women that in fact you yourself want actually you are the person that really wants to be a mother. Actually, you really want to sacrifice all your livelihoods in order to do this, ladies and gentlemen. We think in order to make sure that people shelve their patriarchy, we need to expose it for what it is, rather than people using patriarchal double-speak in this particular circumstance. Before I go any further, yes, ma'am.
Actually, it's naive to think that they're more honest. What's stopping them from believing that they'll be the better caretaker?
Okay, if they think they're the better caretakers, then they will, because the status quo is that they don't take any responsibility at all, ladies and gentlemen. So you need to prove why that's essentially a bad thing when currently most of them don't, ladies and gentlemen. We think that's important. The last thing is that I want to talk a little bit about how this affects the relationship between individuals within that relationship, marriage, or within motherhood. Because oftentimes, we think it's essentially important for us to acknowledge that in order for the idealization of motherhood also creates idealized versions of what it means to be a mother. That there is a perfect mother. That every time you fail, every time you don't send your kid to a soccer practice, every time you fail and don't pack a lunchbox, or God damn it, you don't go to a PTA meeting, you have failed essentially because you're not a real mother. Picking to choose to go to a part-time job because you want to feel alive and young again and you want to finally make some money within your job makes you seem like you are uncaring, frigid woman that doesn't care about your children and those circumstances. That's the narrative that's created when women are shackled by their circumstance, being told that they are horrible people, they are horrible mothers, at the point at which they make even the slightest compromise of not treating every child like a special little snowflake like they are, and not treating them like their highest priority in their lives, ladies and gentlemen. Women are mothers too. My mother essentially threw her life away in terms of working, in terms of chasing any sort of personal dream that they had, ladies and gentlemen. I would have preferred that my mother wasn't forced in that circumstance and be able to make larger choices that they had, that she had in society. I'm exceptionally proud to wish my mother happy birthday, but also propose. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite the member of opposition.
How do you stand here with this thing? No, don't do that. That's weird. Yeah. Hello? Okay, cool. I don't have a sappy story about my mom because unlike everyone here, mom basically did what everyone did. But I do know what this debate about and what it isn't. This motion isn't regret motherhood. It is regretting the idealization of motherhood. So in both government and opposition worlds, there will be motherhood. It's about how people interpret and view their motherhood and how they appreciate it. With regards to that, the closing opposition is going to do two things in this debate. Number one, I'm going to tell you why co-opting the one thing the patriarchy has made women good at means that you're going to empower women to fight better fights. And second, why absent the idealization of motherhood, things will be far worse for women and the way they are viewed. Before I go on to opening government, let's take out closing government. They say two things. Either one, they say the idealization is superficial, which you call the bigot out for the bigot that they are, or two, that they say women are pressured to be the best mom that they can be. I'm going to say two things. One is that if it's true that the idealization is superficial, that men often give women credit for good things but they don't actually like them, can you imagine the world that you will live in, where you don't think mothers are beautiful, where they do jobs and you pinpoint every failure that they are, you give them a harder time to exist in status quo? Because the world, ceteris paribus, wouldn't be equality. It will be women suffering more, women more likely to get discriminated, sexually harassed, and suffering. So if that means we can at least give women greater clout to claim that they're important, I would have that superficial kid. What's the point of calling out the bigot in your world? Because you call them out, ask them to be honest, that results in women being disempowered, more likely to get fired, more likely to suffer. So I don't know what you want to call them out for. But the second is in terms of women being forced to be the best mother they are, therefore compromising jobs, they have to go for PTAs. In a world where you don't idealize a mom for going to the PTA, forcing her maybe to sacrifice for her daughter, you would force her to carry it out as a role that you just have to do because the patriarchy assigned it to you. There wouldn't be beauty to it, there would just be suffering from it. So going to the PTA exists in both worlds, but whether or not you will love going to the PTA only exists in ours. I would rather us be that. So closing opposition, I don't know, closing government, I don't know why you want to call it patriarchy. It's not going to make you very important. With regards to the opening government, I want to talk about two things. Number one, on coercing women to motherhood, we will be the first thing to say it's okay. It's all right if women are coerced into motherhood because the comparison is worse. Because the coercion in your world exists into opting into motherhood, but opting into motherhood as a role, as something you have to do because you're part of the family and that's what you're used for. So the point at which you don't beautify or romanticize motherhood, that's a world in which your role is to give birth to the child, and then parenting will be done by the father, taking care will be done by the father, because you're useless. Equality is not the comparison. The comparison is the patriarchal structure that exists. Have a seat. But the second is they say they want more parental involvement from fathers. I want you to imagine a world in which a father is bigoted and patriarchal. Why on earth would you want him to be more involved with the child? If it means mothers are more involved than in your world, the comparison is preferable, because in your world, the father gets to say, your mom was only here to give birth to you. That's as far as it went. If we glorify her for her sacrifices, at least she has some clout in saying how the child should be raised, the education she should get, the type of job she should be expected to receive. So really, more parental involvement is actually more harmful. My extension, but before that, opening.
If pressure exists on both sides, wouldn't you prefer them having access to a diversity of roles than to be pressured into one role?
I'm sorry, Kelvin, that's not the world we live in. In a world absent of the pressure to be a beautiful, glorified mom, the pressure would be either to be a mom or to remain at home and not get a job. Because your patriarchal husband's not going to go, yeah, considering I don't like you for being a motherhood, I might as well let you be the CEO of my company or get a job. I don't know what the comparison is on the government bench. Let's talk about co-opting patriarchal structures. Note in this debate that women in patriarchal communities literally have been made to do nothing else. They literally have been told you can't be politicians, you can't be businesswomen, you can't be social activists, either because they literally tell you can't, or they make structures likely for you to fail. Sexual harassment is more likely, or likely not to get a job, harder to get into education. This means the patriarchy has made it so that women are exclusively good at being motherhood. So what we are going to do in the closing opposition is say, in a world where you idealize motherhood, you are co-opting the one thing that the patriarchy values you for, and you're going to use it to your benefit. How is this going to happen? Like, the first thing I will say is, note in a lot of these communities, often to convince a man not to rape another woman is very hard. But to convince a man not to rape another woman because your mother is important is really easy. That's why your campaigns, they say, imagine if it was your mom who was mugged. Imagine if your mom was denied the treatment. And immediately bigoted individuals say, yeah, I'm going to attribute my mom to these sacrifices. So really, the patriarchal men that hate women, that think they have no importance in this world, are more likely in this particular instance, as a result of idealization, to care about these women. But the second thing I will say is, if it's true in our world that they are forced to be mothers, what does this force give you access to? I think it's a trade-off, right? So the force from being a mother gives you access to 1, more clout in politics, 2, more clout in your communities, 3, more clout economically. How do I mean this? In a world where politicians victim blame, slut shame in your world, the fact that you are a mother and you're able to claim that you sacrifice a lot and people value you for that sacrifice, you can combat the narrative of politicians. People are more likely to support you because you're a mother. Because it's in your world, they're poorer, they don't have the clout of a mother, they are less likely to be attributed to the successes. That's a world in which the fight against the patriarchy is so much harder. So idealization comes with coercion, sure, but it means you can do many other things as a result of the privilege that the patriarchy gives you. Second thing, what happens in the absence of idealization? So I think there was not enough argumentation put in the off about what the world would look like. It could be 2 things. Either one, it will be an idealization of things that are antithetical to motherhood, things like aggressiveness, patriarchal structures, men or fatherhood. I think this is a world in which women, either one, have to become more like men in order to succeed, or 2, will try to be feminine and mother-like but fail at it because your world doesn't give chance to women to be motherhood. Or the second thing I will say is, in this world, maybe it won't be fatherhood that will be idealized. It'll be neutrality. And neutrality is a world in which women always stand to lose because they are more likely to not succeed. You try getting the bigot to be more honest, he will never tell your women to get employed. He will never tell the women you're more likely to get structural changes when it comes to rape culture because you're not important in this community. If it's true that the patriarchy doesn't value for anything else in this community, but they care so much about your motherhood, they place it as a priority over politicians, over money, because you are the sacrificial lamb in my birth, I would use as a tool to convince everyone that my voices matter. Female considerations like child mortality, more likely to get contraception, all those things, men won't speak out about in your world, but an idealized mother is more likely to get support for. Mother Teresa was a horrible human being, I would think so. But the status she got brought so much attention to child mortality. Calcutta has 48 government hospitals, but he has 366 private hospitals. In a world where people didn't care about motherhood, we would have a world in which people would continue not caring about women.
And this will teach you completely the government side and by judgment.
Baby she and she looks 13, Jasmine, Jasmine.
Panel, ladies and gentlemen, we don't think romanticizing motherhood in any way empowers women or help them fight the patriarchy. When the first wave feminists fight for the right to vote, right to education, right to land, they never say, because we are mothers, give us votes, give us education, and all those things. That's the most unpersuasive argument I've ever heard. And the worst thing I think I've heard for closing opposition was that we need to co-opt this patriarchal ideal that the only thing women are good at is being mothers, and we should ride on that narrative. I think it's horrible. I think we should never internalize or legitimize the idea that the only thing a woman can be good at is being a mother. Not only does it harm the way in which men look at women and think, right, that's the thing that's most important about her. The moment I marry a woman, I can immediately assume that she will be very happy to embrace motherhood. The moment I date a woman, I can immediately assume that she would love to carry my child. They also hurt the way in which women view themselves into immediately assuming that that's the only thing that they're good at. That women who don't become mothers at the end of the day wonder whether they missed anything in life, whether they lived an incomplete life because society told them that was the only thing that you are good at, that God gave that to you, that's why you should do that. We don't think that that's a good thing. We think we prefer to fight the patriarchy by appealing to bigots, appealing to people that women are human beings, individual, absent of whether or not they're mothers or not. We think that's by far the most effective way in which we fight the patriarchy. We think closing opposition loses this debate. No, thank you. So is this narrative a feminist hijack narrative to empower motherhood in an equal and fair manner according to side opening opposition? We don't think so. Because realize that this narrative of idealizing motherhood is a narrative that's not exclusively owned by feminists. It's a narrative that's owned by society. That means that every level of society feel like they can have a say on motherhood, or what is an ideal mother, and how much pressure they can put on a mother. What this means is that in the cultural and religious context, they can use idealization to shape women into this ideal childbearing person according to their religious scriptures and keep them at home. When this ideal is then hijacked and shaped by patriarchy, they can create many versions of an ideal mom. That mom that goes to PTA meeting like Miff says, a mom that has to feed her child first, a mom that will never leave an abusive relationship because a mother can never leave her child, but a father completely can. So all this hatred and anger towards the abandonment of a child or a child not turning out as well will always be singularly directed towards a mother, given that the ideal of motherhood can be hijacked by any level of society and not exclusively owned, unfortunately, by feminists. No, thank you. So we don't think this is in any way creates a healthy form of the way in which we view mothers, nor a healthy way in which we view parenthood as well. So unlike what we think, yes, motherhood is tough, but we don't think the idealization of motherhood in any way allows mother to go through motherhood in an easier and much better way. Why do we say this? We think that instead, what it does is it sets an unrealistic ideal as how motherhood will look like. That when you look at your child, immediately you feel this magical connection. That when you grow up and all your sacrifices that you give towards your child, you will feel ultimately happy and absolutely glorious at the fact that it was great that you sacrificed for your child. But what happens when that's not the case? Because it's unrealistic that all mothers feel that way. That after pushing a child through their womb, the first thing they feel is not pain, but love and magic. We don't think that that's the case. When they don't feel that, that means that they feel like they failed societal expectation as to what is an ideal mom. And they feel like they failed that ideal. Or either that they're a failed mom, or that for some reason that motherhood isn't working out for them. So we think the ideal, as opposed to helping them get through motherhood in a better way, sets an unrealistic standard as to how they view motherhood. We think it hurts the woman as well as hurts the child. It hurts the woman because she blames herself for not being able to hit what society feels a woman should be like. Society then allows themselves to criticize a woman based on the fact that she doesn't fit that ideal. The father allows himself to criticize that woman because she didn't fit that ideal, just empowered by this narrative that a woman should always be ideal, no later. And it also hurts the child, because if a mother feels like she's a failure, it's likely that she'll feel unprepared to look after this child. It's likely that she feels resentment towards this child and give up on her child. So we think at every level, this ideal version of motherhood is horrible towards how we expect mothers to be. Opening.
Within an expectation, pushing into the ideal goal based on utility will exist on your side. How do you provide a comparative nuance if you don't allow for an appreciation to the sacrifices and the choices that the person makes if they choose to be a mother?
No. So the misunderstanding outside opposition is that the appreciation of motherhood needs to come exclusively because of the idealization of motherhood. Why is that really important? It's not unrealistic for us to say that a person can appreciate having a child, a person can appreciate relationships between yourself and another human being that you bear, or another human being that you adopt, absent of the idealization of motherhood. What this means is that human connection is important to everybody, and it's far better on our side because you define how that relationship should be like. You define whether or not you appreciate this form of relationship without allowing society to tell you that you must appreciate this form of relationship, and you must appreciate all the sacrifices that come with this form of relationship, and you have to be like a good mother at all times. So we think that on our side, we truly create true relationships that are better between mother and child, and we allow that mother to choose whether or not she wants that relationship, and we think motherhood will exist regardless. But we think mothers on our side choose to be mothers. Mothers on our side are not set to this unrealistic expectation as to what motherhood could be. And we think on our side, we're also able to gain empathy for motherhood. So they say that empathy for motherhood is something exclusive to their side, that will prevent people from raping a woman because she's a mother. So appealing to someone close to you that don't rape someone because they're your sister and your mother still don't have to come with the idealization of motherhood. It just comes with creating empathy towards another human being, regardless of whether or not they're a mother. It empowers another person to rape your girlfriend because she's not a mother yet, or a young person because they're not a mother yet. We want to create empathy exclusively for individuals, human beings, and not only mothers. So at the end of the day, we think the idealization of motherhood never ever helps the mother or the woman. It only hurts them and their children. We're really proud to propose.
Thank you, Albert. To conclude the grand finals now, I'd like to call upon the opposition group. Yeah.
That's it.
I tried to be a man and I failed. Amrit and I know that as two women debaters, what it means to embrace womanhood, to embrace femininity, to embrace the expectations of maybe motherliness, and find our way to get here. The standards of being a mother may be painful, but the standards of the patriarchy are even more painful, are sometimes physically painful. I will tell you how Jasmine failed to engage with all of Amrit's extensions, how their extension also falls out of this debate before finally dealing with opening government. Firstly, let's look at what they have to defend, right? In their world, the patriarchy sees no respect in you beyond your function as a mother, that you have to give birth and then let the dad take the role because they are a better caretaker. They may fight the good fight, but that assumes that the patriarchy doesn't actively attack you, that you're honest, because won't actually take away all the glory that you actually have. The fight is not possible when you do not try to co-opt the structures of patriarchy. That the other side, women don't feel the magic of having a child, but instead find difficulty in motherhood, have no motivation to believe that being a mother is something that is worthwhile. We think that the men that are liberal on their side will have no a reason to empathize with women, will have no reason to see that that woman is like my mother. Instead, she's just another woman doing another job, being another parent. We think that's the world that they have to defend, and they fail to do so. But let's look at Amrit's extensions and why they fail to engage with it or were poorly responded to. Because while OO tells us that women deserve to have this recognition, we tell you that they are more empowered by co-opting these like roles and standards, and that the absence of this actually harms these women and these mothers, right? Because Jasmine tells you that now women think that the only thing they're good at are like being a mother, right? But here's the thing, right? You take away one of the only things that are accessible, one of the only means of success that are accessible to women right now. The uphill battle that comes with trying to be a man, the uphill battle that comes with trying to be a manly engineer is one that a lot of women fail at. The least you could do is try to co-opt the ability to see more womanly and fight the patriarchy better when you do that, right? This means that women have more clout because already men respect them for being women. The women have more clout to lobby for more like women-friendly policies because they're already glorified in our society. Men don't see a reason why they should help women unless they think that they are like your mothers or they already glorify it. We think that you like what the problem with that side is that they don't choose to do this, but they try to attack the patriarchy and we can only expect more attacks from the patriarchy from then on, right? When you try to assume that you can be a mother because it's another job, but also take on the role of an engineer or the role of a doctor, the patriarchy pegs you to the definition of what it means to be a man. The patriarchy pegs you to that level of success, right? That standard of success is one that you're unlikely to meet when you're more womanly, that you speak more like a woman. But that standard is more available to you when you are more like a woman. Like Mother Teresa, when she make lots of changes because everyone saw her as womanly and the success of a woman. They would have gotten that. You would have gotten like Mahatma Gandhi or like really aggressive male leaders on your side and never make these changes because they don't care about the specific nuances of motherhood and women, right? But also, they think of the absence of this coercion that like OG and like CG tried to tell you about, is really harmful, right? We think the absence of that is more harmful, right? Where we think that maybe you are expect to standards of being the ideal woman, but at least you are motivated to be a woman and to be a mother, right? That motherhood is something that a lot of people would fail to do if on your side, right? A lot of people still have to go to PTA meetings, but not be able to do so in a way that actually worthwhile. A lot of times it's more difficult, right? To be you'll try either have two things, right? Either one, you try to be like more like a man and you'll never be able to do that, or you'll try to be more feminine and motherlike, but always fail to do so, right? But let's look at like CG's extension. They tell you that you want to call out the bigot for the bigot that they are, right? We don't think you actually like detract from the bigotry, but you actually empower the bigotry, right? You empower the bigotry because they're going to be not like kinder to you, but rather more mean to you. Actively tell you that you have no function beyond being a mother, that all you need to do is give birth, then I'll take on the caretaking work. We don't think that you actually respect mothers and women on your side, and it's actually more harmful then, right? But the second thing is that the ideal of being a mother, right? Like we think that the ideal of being mother is important within like actually having mothers do what they do like the roles that are expected, that role and the way that's motivated, unlike the ones at your side, right? Mothers will still exist on your side, but they'll never be respected then. They'll never feel like it's worthwhile. They'll never get the support. Like postpartum depression actually needs more psychological aid, but because you see it as another job, you won't actually give this specific nuance aid to them, right? But I'll deal with open government before that. Sure, closing.
Your arguments work in a swap reality where everyone's an unrepentant figure and there are no political arguments of political force existent absent this one. Most political advocacy empowering women of the subsequent at the 20th century existed so much and so successful without ever referencing being a mother. Why do all of this suddenly disappear?
Yeah, because I'm more likely to be bigoted on your side because they have no incentive to glorify or like respect mothers. But even your most liberal man or your most like non-bigoted man will see like, oh yeah, they're equal to us, it's just another job, and never give the specific nuance aid for these mothers. A lot of people are more harmed on your side. But let's look at let's actually remove the expectation of caretaking or motherly roles for women, right? We tell you that this is a world that doesn't explain the absence like what Amrit explained to you, right? The absence is one where women don't have that motivation to be a mother, but also don't get the support and aid because you're seen as having the equal role as men and having just another job. Therefore, why would you need more help or more support, right? This is one where women cannot succeed in because you're always seen as just like equal or never getting the equitable aid that is needed, right? You're seen as one that has a function of giving birth, but never seen as being successful as a caretaker. One of the most accessible means of success that a woman has is taken away from them on your side. We rather coerce them to believing that they can be successful in this and doing really well if it means that they don't try and fail within the patriarchal standards that you have. We'd rather have this accessible standard of motherhood and womanliness on our side if it means that women don't barrage themselves against fighting the patriarchy and failing in that course.
Thank you for the debate. Please pause the floor and shake hands. Meanwhile, the adjudicators will be adjourned for deliberation for approximately around 10 minutes.